Hi everybody, this is Katje. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I want to begin this evening by modeling for you this dress that I recently purchased from White Market, Black Market. This is actually a reversible dress. In one of my previous videos, I wore it the other side out, it was sort of a black, almost like a cocktail dress. So I wore that in one of my previous videos, and now I've turned it around and I'm wearing this beautiful floral print side. I love this dress. It has a kind of a late summer floral pattern on it. It's in kind of a Neo-60s modish style. So I really like this dress. It's very versatile and you can get a lot of wear out of it. I'm wearing it with these black stiletto high heels to complement the outfit. So let me show you it from the side. I hope everybody's having a really good summer. Here in the desert, we finally had some much needed rain. This is our monsoon season, which usually begins in the middle of July and runs through August. So we definitely needed to have some rain, and we're finally getting it. That's one side of the outfit. Let me show you this. And it's been very nice. We need the rain in order to recharge our aquifers and our various water sources here in the desert. So fortunately, we've gotten that. So that's the dress, and you can see it from the back here. Let me show you that. So what I want to do tonight is, having modeled my dress, and again the store that I bought this dress from is White Market, Black Market. This is a really nice boutique store. It has a lot of really chic styles that you can purchase, but for a fairly reasonable price. It is national, so you should be able to find one near you if you're interested. What I'd like to do this evening is talk about another video I saw on YouTube recently by Bishop Robert Barron, and it's another video that has to do with this recent movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that was a theme in one of my previous videos. And what I want to do is respond to some of the things that Bishop Barron says in his video about the film, the second video, which I found to be very interesting and insightful. But I also think that there's an oversimplification that I want to talk about that you will find interesting. So basically, remember that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about an aging cowboy actor played by Leonardo DiCaprio and his best friend, who was also his stuntman throughout his career, Brad Pitt, and various things and episodes that occur to them. It's a very interesting film. It's directed by Quentin Tarantino. And so I highly recommend it for reasons that I described previously. Bishop Barron, in this particular video, discusses the 4 cardinal virtues. This is a notion that we find in Aristotle and that is extensively developed by St. Thomas Aquinas. And so what Bishop Barron does in this YouTube video is very insightfully and interestingly discuss how the Brad Pitt character exemplifies these 4 moral virtues. So what I want to do is very briefly summarize that, and then I want to move on to what I consider to be an oversimplification that's strongly implied or suggested by Bishop Barron's comments. So let's first of all remind ourselves of what the 4 moral virtues are, cardinal virtues, and then I want to say briefly how, according to Barron, correctly I believe, the Brad Pitt character exemplifies these virtues. So what are they? Well, the 4 moral cardinal virtues are justice, temperance or moderation, courage or bravery, and prudence. So let's begin with justice. Many times in the film, the Brad Pitt character does exemplify justice, most of all in his relationship with his friend Leonardo DiCaprio. He's loyal. He would go through fire for him. He really cares for him. He makes sacrifices. He looks after him. He's the best friend you could possibly desire. And he's very fair, very honest, but also very supportive. So certainly in his dealings, not just with DiCaprio, but with everybody in the film, Pitt is very just. His character exemplifies justice. The same is true of the cardinal virtue, the second one, of moderation or temperance. There's a particular incident in the film where the Brad Pitt character picks up a young girl who's hitchhiking and she's not even 16 or 17. She's very, very young. She's certainly underage. And at one point during the car ride, she makes herself available to him sexually. And the Pitt character refuses to pick up on that. He's obviously attracted to her. He certainly would be willing or capable of having a sexual relationship with her, but he doesn't do it because he realizes that she's underage, so he controls himself. That's temperance or moderation. Certainly, the Pitt character exemplifies courage, the third of the cardinal virtues, because at various times in the film, he shows himself ready to fight if necessary to defend himself, or to defend his friend, or to protect the innocent, or maybe just to teach somebody a lesson, but he certainly does not back down from a conflict if he feels that he needs to do it. Although when he doesn't get involved in the conflict, he doesn't go overboard. That's another example of moderation. He tempers his response so that it meets, it does what needs to be done in that particular situation. And then finally, the fourth of the four cardinal virtues is prudence. And as Aquinas says, and Bishop Barron repeats, prudence is the queen of the virtues. What prudence does is that it enables us to look at particular situations and take these general principles about justice and courage and temperance, the other three cardinal virtues, and apply them in a concrete situation. So, for example, there's a situation at the end of the film, and I'm going to give a spoiler alert here. If you haven't seen the film, I am going to reveal crucial developments in it. So, if you haven't seen the film, you might want to wait before you watch my video until after you have seen the film. But in any event, there's a spoiler alert. So, what happens at the end of the film is that members of the Manson family come to Leonardo DiCaprio's house. Leonardo DiCaprio lives in the Hollywood Hills, as I mentioned last time, and he actually lives next to Sharon Tate and her husband, the director Roman Polanski. And as those of you who are familiar with the Manson murders may know, Sharon Tate was killed by the Manson family members in this kind of murder spree. She was killed, and she was also pregnant. Her unborn child was killed, and other people in the house with her were killed. But in the Tarantino film, we have an alternative history where instead of going to the Tate residence and the Polanski residence, the Manson killers come to the house, to Leonardo DiCaprio's house next door, where DiCaprio and Pitt have just returned from a night of drinking, and then they're going to continue to celebrate, and they're making, margaritas, and I think that DiCaprio is out in the swimming pool, kind of hanging out, and Pitt is in the house, and that's when these people come in. And to make a long story short, he responds to them with violence, excessive violence, in order to stop them. And we see just how capable he is, how powerful and how strong he is. There are other cases in the film where he uses violence, but he doesn't use that much because he didn't need to. In the other cases, there's a case where he goes out to the Spahn Ranch and encounters another Manson family member who threatens him or approaches him in a threatening way, and he defends himself without going overboard, but he does defend himself by punching the guy out and throwing him into the side of the car, but he doesn't kill him, or he doesn't, completely go medieval on him. He tempers his response. Whereas when the Manson people show up at DiCaprio's residence in the Hollywood Hills, Pitt knows then, through the virtue of prudence, that he's going to need to exert full force here in order to stop these people, to kill them, because that's the only way he's going to be able to save both himself and his friend. So this is what Barron talks about, and I think quite rightly, he observes that Brad Pitt's character exemplifies those four cardinal moral virtues of justice, temperance or moderation, courage or bravery, and prudence, the queen of the virtues that enables you to apply them in particular circumstances. Now, what do I find problematic about Barron's discussion? And I do. At various points in his video, it's obvious that he sees Pitt as kind of a throwback to a simpler time in American history. He's kind of a cowboy type, you know, when things are black and white. And Barron talks about when the country was morally sounder or of a stronger or a firmer moral footing, so things were less ambiguous. And Pitt's character is a throwback to that. And the way in which he exemplifies the four cardinal virtues, according to Barron, is also an echo of this more moral, clearer time when things were really more in black and white, and people could be fully moral in a way that perhaps now things are more ambiguous and complicated, and we don't really have that anymore, according to Bishop Barron's opinion. There's some truth to that, but what do I find problematic about it? At one point he shows, for example, he cuts into his video, and you can do a search on YouTube if you're interested in seeing it. He shows some footage of John Wayne, or a photograph of John Wayne, the Duke, who is this kind of quintessential American good guy, American hero, who's, there's no moral complexity, there's no moral confusion, he just knows what to do. And clearly Bishop Barron sees Pitt as a more recent example of this, or almost like a throwback to this kind of moral clarity that's gone missing. Now, part of this picture that the bishop is urging upon us, it seems to me, is that the four cardinal virtues, there's this kind of ideal picture of how morality works, and this is what human beings, if they were really following morality, if they were really had done what they were supposed to do all along, this is how morality would work. There wouldn't be any problems, there wouldn't be any ambiguity. Everything is laid out in this very clear, almost with diamond clarity manner, so that things are, everything is very structured and organized, and it's pretty straightforward. But we all know that real life isn't like that. And what I'm going to do by way of critique is I'm going to go back to this alternative scenario with the Mansons in the film, and I'm going to give it a twist and show how there can very easily arise situations in which we could never really fulfill all these moral virtues, or we would be obligated to do so, but we can't. So we can't do the right thing. Now, I talked about this in one of my previous videos, but I want to bring it down to earth in the context of this film. So let's go back to the night that the Manson murderers enter the Leonardo DiCaprio property. And let's suppose now that things fall out in a different way. Let's suppose that Sharon Tate is over there in the pool with Leonardo DiCaprio's character, talking, just kind of relaxing, maybe having a drink. So they're together in the pool, and let's suppose that the Brad Pitt character is in the house, and the Manson people come in. And so there's this fracas, there's this conflict, and there were like 3 Manson people who showed up. So let's suppose that one of them goes out there, and Pitt's kind of dispatched to, 2 of the Manson killers, but then the third one goes out to the pool, and so here in the meantime, Sharon Tate has gotten out of the swimming pool, and let's suppose that she's run to the house towards Pitt, and she's sort of standing against the wall in terror. And so in the pool is Leonardo DiCaprio, and let's now suppose that one of the Manson people jumps into the pool next to him, and this is the last one who's left, and let's suppose that this Manson person has a gun and a knife. And so with the knife, with the gun, the Manson person is going to shoot the Tate character, and maybe she loses the knife, but she's in the pool with DiCaprio, so she can't really harm DiCaprio, let's put it that way. But she can kill and will kill Sharon Tate unless Pitt immediately intervenes. And the only way he can intervene, those of you who have seen the movie will know, what he does at one point is he brings a flamethrower out and sort of torches, it may be DiCaprio who actually does this, but anyway, a flamethrower is brought out and used to torch one of the Manson people in the pool, who's wound up in the pool. So let's suppose that that's the only weapon of choice that Pitt has available to him to respond to the situation where his best friend is in the swimming pool with the Manson murderer right next to him, and the Manson murderer is pointing a gun at Sharon Tate, who's in terror, cowering against the wall in terror, and he's going to kill her in about 5 seconds if Brad Pitt doesn't intervene. Now, clearly, the most, probably what it would make sense for Pitt to do and what he would do is to use the flamethrower to torch this Manson person. Unfortunately, he's also going to kill his best friend in the same way when he does that. And so what that means is that, and look, he's completely courageous, he's completely just, Pitt wants to do the right thing, he's completely courageous, he doesn't want to drop a bomb on the entire neighborhood, he simply wants to use the most effective means at his disposal to stop the killer. That's the flamethrower. That would be moderation in this context. And he wants to apply all of those virtues in a harmonious way in order to do the right thing. But he can't, because he's torn between these conflicting moral commitments to save the Tate character on the one hand, but if he does that, that means sacrificing his best friend. And certainly he has a moral obligation not to do that, as much as he has one to save the Tate character if he can. Or conversely, if he decides to save his friend and fulfill that moral obligation, then he's going to lose Tate. That means he won't use the flamethrower on the Manson person, and the Manson person will then proceed to shoot Sharon Tate and kill her and her unborn child with a bullet. So the Pitt character is torn between these conflicting moral commitments, and this is certainly, even if we have a John Wayne character, we do not have a John Wayne black or white situation. We have a moral dilemma of the kind that I have discussed in some of my previous theological videos, and I think this is a situation that even if it doesn't actually happen to us, it could. It is possible. So that if we somehow manage to avoid it in the course of our lives, that's simply a matter of luck. That's not any deliberate accomplishment on our part. That's simply that we just got lucky that we never actually found ourselves in a situation like that. So this whole picture that Bishop Barron presents of the 4 cardinal virtues in this harmonious arrangement that could be applied in sort of a simpler moral age or a simple moral, a firmer moral situation if we were all behaving ourselves the way we should, that doesn't really have anything to do with moral reality, and not just now, but you could have the same kinds of dilemmas in the Middle Ages, in ancient times. That's nothing new under the sun. So that I think that there is a serious oversimplification of our moral situation, which is shot through with, if not actual moral dilemmas, certainly the possibility of them. And I think that that undermines the effectiveness of applying these 4 virtues. If that's all we have to go on, mediated to us through divine revelation or whatever, or through Aristotelian philosophy, then that's not going to do it, because we're going to find ourselves in situations where we cannot consistently and simultaneously and prudently apply them. We can't do it, because in obeying one, we're going to have to violate another. We cannot jointly obey or conform to all of them. Now finally, what I want to say in conclusion is that somebody might object, well look, if we're being called upon to do something impossible, then we can't really be required to do it. And the philosopher who's done work on this, who has been very inspirational to me, Lisa Tessman, she discusses this kind of objection. Her basic response is, well look, the fact is we still feel that we're obligated. We feel like the Brad Pitt character, if he sees that this Manson person in the pool is about to shoot Sharon Tate, even though the Manson person is right next to his best friend, the DiCaprio character, well, Brad Pitt feels an immediate urge, an emotional response to do something, to kill the Manson character, maybe to use the flamethrower, but he also feels a tug the other way. He feels a very powerful emotional tug not to kill his friend, even if it means sacrificing Sharon Tate and her unborn child. And so he feels this. This is, in other words, this is evidence that what grounds our moral commitments is not some kind of rational decision procedure about, well, is this a situation in which I can is it possible for me to jointly fulfill all these moral values? If not, then that somehow it releases me from it. If it were a purely rational ground, for our moral judgments, then that might work. But the fact that we have this powerful emotional response where it won't do to reason. I'm not going to sit there and reason about my friend. Part of treating him as a friend is that my response to him is immediate and emotional and without any kind of, it's unconditional. Or similarly, if I care about Sharon Tate and her unborn child, if I have empathy or sympathy for her, that's grounded in my emotional reaction, my immediate sense that, or Pitt's sense that he has to do something. He has to intervene. But the problem is that no matter what he does, he's going to wind up violating or failing to conform to one of the other four cardinal virtues because he'll have to do something unjust, for example, by torching his friend along with the Manson person, or alternatively, he will have to save his friend and spare the Manson person at least until he can get closer to him. But in the meantime, the Manson person is going to kill Sharon Tate, and so Pitt will be unable to fulfill his moral obligation to intervene to save her life. So that's what I want to say, and I think that there's a kind of romanticizing and a kind of naivete in Bishop Barron's commentary about moral reality. I think that it's sort of like in physics, if the world was just really completely smooth inclined planes without any kind of friction on the surface, frictionless planes, well, physics would be really easy, and it would be a lot easier than it is, and things would be very, very different. But it's not like that. The physical reality is more complicated than that. There are quantum irregularities, there are all these kinds of things that throw a monkey wrench into these sort of traditional, very harmonious pictures of how everything is supposed to go, or general relativity and special relativity. That throws a considerable monkey wrench into Newtonian physics, which is beautiful on its own, but it doesn't really work in that situation. And I want to say the same thing about Aristotelian morality centered on these four cardinal virtues that Bishop Barron ascribes to this moral firmness and this moral clarity. No, I don't think that really works in many cases. I think that there are going to be cases in which we cannot simultaneously conform to those virtues, and that to me means we need something else, something that I've talked about in some of my previous videos, a radical commitment to God understood in a radical way, where we can somehow, through our own decisions about how to respond to a divine initiative through Christ, we can become the authors of whether God is something good or evil with respect to us. And so we can conform, if we choose to do so, we can make it be that God is something good for us and things work out well for us, and there isn't any kind of moral conflict. But that requires us to chuck the Aristotelian stuff and commit radically to a theological vision that I have defended before, that's based in the Christian faith. If we don't do that, then we are not going to find our way out of the human condition that is oversimplified by Barron, which is namely, we either do or may very well fall into moral dilemmas where we cannot apply this very idealized picture of harmonized moral norms or principles that you find in the four cardinal virtues. So that's what I wanted to say this evening. Sorry about going on a little bit too long, but I think this is a really fascinating topic. And again, I think that Bishop Barron has some very interesting things to say about it. I just think that at the end of the day, I have some serious reservations about the way the Aristotelian virtues are being idealized and romanticized, it seems to me a bit. I think things are more complicated than that. And because I share Bishop Barron's faith, I think that it behooves us to accept that complexity, because that will lead us into a more religious, not just a philosophical picture like Aristotelian morality or ethics, but into a more theological and religious picture of the kind that I think Bishop Barron would be receptive to, even though he and I may not agree theologically about a number of things. I think we would agree about that. So on that ironic note, I will end. This is Katje Eckhart. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the feed below this video. But until next time, I wish everybody a safe and a restful and an enjoyable good evening. Be good to each other. Take care of each other. Love one another. This is Katje, your cross-dressing queen of the night. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Sorry. What calls up?